What is the democracy for which the world is battling, for which we offer up a manpower, woman power, money power, our own? What is the democracy for which the world is battling, for which we offer up a manpower, woman power, money power, our own? Not wait for such as these. No one dares a liberty pause to heed their complaints of man and woman.
That's a Eva O'Donovan song that just dropped recently, and something about her voice always just calls to me, and it feels as though maybe she's got something to say about the current moment as well. Anyway, this is an Ask or Tell Me Anything episode, so I'm going to give out the number right now, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. You can call up and talk about anything. That's the rule. Obviously, I feel as though what has happened over the last 48 hours, it is like a dry erase board. It's like a whiteboard. It's like certain events kind of erase a lot of the things that have come before them. So on Friday, we were in the middle of a long conversation about Joe Biden's eligibility, about his fitness for the office, about how this election might unfold with him as one of the candidates. We were perhaps looking a little bit forward to the Republican convention in Milwaukee, which begins tonight. The fact that Trump would be and will be revealing his vice presidential nominee, his running mate, fairly soon. We don't even have a time certain. It might even be during the actual televised convention tonight. It's not clear to me. There were a lot of things to talk about. we were talking about them. And then this happened. And it doesn't change everything, but it does slightly alter the kind of syntax of everything that we've talked about so far about this year in America in 2024. And so with that in mind, I mean, I'm kind of happy that we're doing Ask or Tell Me Anything today. We did discuss over the weekend scheduling some guests, and my thought was, by now there's been a lot of analysis, been a lot of experts and non-experts weighing in. There are, coherent theories about it and incoherent theories about it and strange conspiracy theories about it. It's all out there. I don't know, I could try to book some guests, but in a way, just hearing from you, how you're feeling right now, what's changed in your mind, any of those things. But you can also call in. I mean, there's no boundaries here. When we talk about, hopefully good taste will be a boundary, but whatever it is you want to talk about. 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. We have plenty of space for you right now. That may not continue to be the case, so you might want to call. So here we go with Adrienne in West Hartford, a regular caller in this format. Welcome to the show again.
Hi. Did you say Adrienne, me?
Yes, you. Yes.
Oh, thanks so much, Colin. So my take on this is that this was a sort of a hiccup. It like you said, you have to. It sort of changes the syntax in which we talk about it. But I think that thus far, the pressure that Biden has been getting to step aside for the convention, but as a candidate and maybe even as president, has been mainly quietly behind the scenes, not so much publicly. And that's probably going to continue for another few more days before people feel comfortable talking about it more in public. But I mean, the situation hasn't changed. The disaster is looming ahead of us. The most recent news from the courts is not good today. And I think, I don't know, David Blight, a Yale historian, put out a piece in the New Republic about 2 weeks ago, and he recommended that in fairly short order that Biden actually indicate that he's going to resign effective at the last day of the convention of the Democratic convention, and that he and Kamala and the big bench of the Democratic Party go barnstorming across the country in the meantime, promoting her, and that if he sees his votes to her at the convention, which I think means that it's not automatic. People can defer from that, but probably most people would go along with it. And then if she emerges from the convention as the incumbent president and goes into the election as the incumbent president, she has a much better chance of winning than the kind of draw, that it would be nail-biting dread if she were to be going in later as simply a candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I agree up to a point about that. I should say that in the political science seminar that I taught for 5 different semesters at Yale, not this past spring, but in 2023, well, I would always have my students at the end of the term kind of react to a hypothetical scenario, imagine campaign messaging in a very specific kind of presidential campaign. So in 2023, I created a scenario where, among other things, Biden did step aside, and Kamala Harris had the opportunity to be president for a while and to be an effective president, because I did think that would change the narrative in a very interesting way. Now, I don't know, the incredibly limited amount of time that she would serve as president if Biden were to step down at the end of the convention. It might put more pressure on her and deliver fewer rewards. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I understand the point that you're making. A couple of other things that we should just sort of say this as kind of creating boundaries today. Yeah, we're going to talk about politics because we're in the middle of a presidential election. We don't forget, as President Biden pointed out last night, a candidate was shot at and hit in the ear. The shooter is dead, and other bystanders dead. Other people got injured. This is, we're going to be talking about politics, but that doesn't mean this isn't a very serious thing that's happened. Yep. It absolutely did. But to your other point, I would say this, and this does sound a little bit cynical, but it's true, I think. The picture or pictures of Trump with shaking his fist with blood trickling down the side of his face, those are going to become iconic. And it almost looks like a Marvel comic book cover. It's so outsized and dramatic and just, It's such a big thing. And what you really have behind that is this, the reality of a guy who got shot at, wound up down on the ground, got back up, and pumped his fist before being escorted off. That is, in fact, a kind of, theatrical vitality. And on the other hand, when the dust settles on all this and the breezes blow some of it away, Joe Biden is still, for all of his virtues, a guy who really does seem a little shaky on his feet, a little shaky with his arms. He just, he doesn't exude vitality. He did for many, many, many years, up to and including challenging people to push-up contests at state fairs and things like that. That's over. That guy isn't there anymore. And I think that the contrast between Trump and Biden, a lot of people have been saying for a long time, well, Trump has his own senior moments. Some of them actually show a more protracted form of befuddlement than Biden typically exhibits. Trump is this, Trump is that. But now people do judge things in very stark terms. And here's this, gigantic moment that will become, in one way or another, iconic. And it's hard to imagine anybody really being able to measure up to that kind of drama. And Joe Biden it just exacerbates what was already a problem, Adrienne.
I agree. But I think even if in limited amount of time, Kamala's youth would, take center stage. And that would be great.
Yes, I mean, if she handles herself well, I no longer. I thought I had some kind of working theories about this particular election cycle and what would work. And they were always a little bit shaky, but they're shakier than ever. And I think a lot of people are starting to feel that way. Thanks for the call, though. Our number, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. And here is Tom in Manchester. Here we go. Hi, Tom. You've got the floor.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yes, I'm calling in as a college-educated African-American male in my late 60s, and I know you're commenting about Joe Biden and age, but it doesn't matter. It's got to do with the attitude. And with Mr. Trump, he's got this serpentine type of look, and lost these last authenticity, and he's always talking about somebody else's appearance. But I feel that he's not the best choice to lead. He's racist, misogynistic, and just a vindictive man. I'm going to call him out as it is, and I guess he appeals to white nationalists and his base, but he doesn't represent all Americans, and he's a xenophobic, racist as well, south of the border, but he's not talking about other countries in the Canadian border. Ms. Harris, I don't like the way she's been disrespected if she was a second choice. I think she's a capable woman, and I have to, watch out, for that, because I remember Sarah Palin, in that 2008 election, and she wasn't that bright either, as people would say. She was ignorant in some ways. And third, I think we're on the verge of, someone had called it out in the Hartford Courant the other day, white nationalism, but I look at it as a new form of fascism that was explained in the New Republic about 2 editions ago, American fascism, and it's not looking, good with the Supreme Court rulings and what they did today. It just perplexes me, and I've lived through the civil rights movement and, benefited from it, hopefully in the right way, and I'm not, super woke, but I can be enlightened, and I do trust your station and PBS more so than the Fox News. So I think we have to just call it what it is, calling out for misogynistic racism, classism against poor people, what happened in an Oregon case of homelessness, and we got bread and butter issues to discuss rather than, immigration. Yeah, I want a, safe wall, but not just south of the border, but north of the border, and stop this, double standardness, and that America belongs to all of us, not just a certain group. And, like I said in the past, I've been called the N-word, and you stand up for principle, and I do what I can in my town of Manchester to make things, right in our educational system, whether people agree with me or not.
Yeah. So, Tom, first of all, let me just say, I'm sorry anybody ever called you that. I'm sorry any child in America ever has to hear that word directed at them or even just said. And I agree with very much of what you say. I will say this, that, I mean, take it for what it's worth, and I'm not really sure that it's worth anything, but Trump has been saying, as of, I think, this morning or last night, that he is going to redraft his acceptance speech at the convention, and he is going to turn it from an attack on Joe Biden and the Democrats into a call for national unity, that somehow or other he's had an aperçu or some kind of epiphany or something as a result of this incident. I mean, if he did something like that, to your point, Tom, it would be essentially the first time he'd ever shown any respect or mutual consideration for any political opponent, both inside his party during primaries and certainly during general elections. He's been nothing but mocking and adversarial and bullying. And so, I mean, I'll be interested to see what it does. If he holds to that and then could stick with it, we'd be talking about a slightly different person. But Tom, I share all of your fears, and thank you for calling up and being very honest and direct about them. Appreciate it very much. Okay, so we've got time for another call or two. All right, we'll go to David, and then we'll go to Catherine, and then we'll take a break. That is currently my plan. David and Wyndham, you've got the floor.
I, of course, always appreciate everything that you have to say about almost everything. I wrote to you about the fact that we had a power outage during the debate, so I listened to the radio.
Yes.
And on the radio, it seemed to me, it was clear Trump was crazy, and Biden, although not as quick and clever as he might have been before, was rational, at least, in most of his responses. And I just feel like we have to get behind the president at this point. This is there's no opportunity for somebody else to come in now. And if you like Kamala Harris, then a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Kamala Harris. But on the opposite end, even if Trump had some kind of an epiphany, as you just said, because someone shot at him and grazed his ear, I can't imagine all of the conservative people that support his agenda are going to suddenly want clean air, want clean water, want food that is not, detrimental to our health, want policies that help people that are indigent or even the middle class, for crying out loud, want a judiciary that is going to see corporations not as human beings, but the attackers of human beings in a lot of instances. I mean, so much is on the line right now, and Trump, even if he did have this epiphany, isn't intellectually strong enough, I don't think, to combat the machine of the Heritage Foundation that has put him where he is. I don't understand Democrats walking. I understand Democrats saying, "Oh my God, Biden isn't as swift as he used to be," but what do people think a president does every single day? I mean, during World War II, Churchill and FDR woke up at noon. To start dealing with the world at hand. What is Biden supposed to do, every moment of the day? Of course, Trump played golf more than any president ever.
Yeah. First of all, I hear you, David, and I think you're really making a very, very good argument on behalf of the way that you think about this. I think what's really true is there's an enormous number of people in this country, an enormous percentage of people who are listening to this show right now, who agree on the first half of every sentence about this. The first half being essentially what you said: we cannot afford to cede this election to Donald Trump. A Trump presidency would be catastrophic for the climate, for women's reproductive rights, for the kinds of people who will be continually appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court and other major federal courts for gun laws. I mean, the irony here is that Trump and so many other Republicans have opposed meaningful gun legislation. Trump was shot with a rifle whose banning he opposes, or has at least previously opposed. So everybody believes, or not everybody, a lot of people believe in the beginning of the sentence. But, I think, David, the sentence then kind of comes to a fork in the road. And the fork in the road is, okay, we can't afford to not have the Democrats win the White House. So we must, and then ... And then, about some percentage of people say, so we must support the president, just as you said. And other people say, so we can't take a chance on Joe Biden. We need somebody who's more plausibly up to the job.
But who is more plausible? I mean, honestly, it has to be Kamala Harris. She's I heard the other day that blacks folk will turn away from the Democratic Party in droves if anyone but Kamala Harris is tuned into this. And I feel like a vote for Biden is a vote for Harris. If that is your thinking.
I see your point. I see your point.
I don't get the abandoned ship mentality here. And Democrats, look at what happened to Al Franken. It is almost similar, except what happened to Al Franken is he disappeared forever. And probably, I've heard, maybe one of the best senators we ever had because of a photograph that was taken 20 years earlier.
I don't think that's I don't think that's entirely analogous. I mean, I totally agree. We were in the middle of, Trump uses the term witch hunt, when it's not appropriate, but that was a witch hunt, and people were kind of there was this purge going on that happened very indiscriminately. Franken was one of the people who got purged on, a pretty flimsy pretext. I totally get that. I think what we're talking about now is a little bit bigger than that, and is a little. It has to do A, with the ability to win an election, and B, with the ability to plausibly govern after that. And I think reasonable, this sounds like a rock I'm ducking down behind, but I think reasonable people may differ about that. I have thought for a long time, long before the debate, long before this conversation started to rage the way that it does, that it was an incredibly risky thing to hope that Joe Biden would get to the finish line without having. Before June 27th, I was worried about when would it come? When would there be a moment where Biden really seemed checked out in a highly public context? And there it was. He was essentially sundowning in front of the world. And even on June 27th, I thought this may be a small mercy. Let's start the conversation now, because if this had happened on October 1st, there really wouldn't be any other conversation to have. So I feel like we've got an opportunity. We should have this conversation. It's not disloyal to have the conversation and make sure we've got the best option in place. I say we, I can't hide my prejudices here. I can't hide my leanings. I'm very worried about what this country will turn into if Donald Trump gets a second term. So let's make sure we're doing the right thing. And yeah, there are 2 schools of thought, or maybe 5 schools of thought about what the right thing is. But we've got a little bit of time to have this conversation. Anyway, let's move on here. We've got Catherine in New London. Then we're going to grab a break. I want to remind you the numbers to call if you want to talk about anything. Get something off your chest. 888-720-9677. In alphanumeric terms, that works out to 888-720-WNPR. Catherine from New London, you have the floor.
Hi, Colin. I'm sorry my voice is squeaky. It's the allergies. But I want to make sure that all of your listeners are well aware of Project 2025. They may have heard the title, but they may not have done a deep dive on it yet. And there's loads and loads of Substacks that will give you bullet points of the atrocities that are planned for this country. And quite frankly, Trump is nothing but the puppet to put this plan into practice. They don't really care whether he is the person. It's just that they get dominion. And I'm talking about American... Oh, God, here goes my brain. I'll start with Federalist Society, because they're right behind it, too. American Heritage, all those guys, a million of them. And Adam Kinzinger, the great Republican who served on the January 6th committee, has done a great Substack this morning, talking about what are true conservative values. Because he is a conservative Republican, or was,
Yeah,
I mean, and
this, you're kind of reviving one of the conversations we had before the whiteboard kind of got erased, and you're right to do it. This was something we were talking about, in the, maybe about 96 hours preceding the shooting.
Oh, good.
Was Project 2025. What was it? To what? Trump had suddenly begun to disavow his association to it. Claiming he doesn't know anybody on it, he doesn't involved in it, he doesn't know anything about it. It is, by the way, a 900-page document, most people are probably going to be pretty reliant on summaries of it. I did see on social media, this is obviously not a substantive thing because it's on social media, but I saw this incredibly complicated Venn diagram that had essentially every piece of dystopian fiction on it, from 1984 to Margaret Atwood's Gilead, and sort of the one thing that everything overlapped into was this tiny little space in the middle that was Project 2025. So yeah, we need to educate people about it. We need to figure out what its implications are. It shouldn't go away as a topic. It did for a little while. Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
If I could just interject one thing I read this morning that was so clever. His come to Jesus moment, so-called, is nothing but gaslighting, which I never understood before, but now I do. We're in an abusive relationship. you know?
Gaslighting the term gaslighting was used a lot during the 4 years of the first Trump presidency. And it'll probably be back. Hopefully it won't be back in quite the same context starting in January of next year. But we don't know that. We don't know what's about to happen. We're going to take a little break right now. The number again, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR.
When my husband George proposed to me, I couldn't help but panic. Never in my wildest fantasy did I marry a mechanic. But Georgie said, well, strike it rich, you'll see, for I am what you call an up-and-comer. And so I gave the boy a chance, prayed he would advance. At least he's not a plumber. When I saw him walking down the aisle, he actually looked cute. I couldn't help but crack a smile. He had bought himself a suit. I let him put a ring on me. And gee, he looked so...
I just want to say something about this song, and specifically about its singer. Its singer is a young woman named Sarah Chase, who is fabulously talented. She's the daughter of Arnold Chase, who's pretty well known in this community, somebody that I've known. I consider her a friend, known him for a really long time. But Sarah also, with my other friend, I only have two friends, with my other friend, Steve Metcalf, Sarah has joined in with us on various kinds of things over the years, musical things, some of them more serious than others. But she's an amazing, amazing talent, and it's been wonderful to watch her kind of rise through show business. She had a regular, fairly major gig on Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and other stuff as well. And she was in this Broadway production of Great Gatsby. That's what you're hearing right now. The Gatsby cast album dropped just a little while ago, just maybe a couple weeks ago, something like that. Sarah has had to temporarily drop out of this production. By the way, I wish you could hear the whole song. I mean, she just tears it up at the end, but as she can. But she's had to drop out of the production because of a fairly significant health issue, which I have no doubt she is going to triumph over. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of, we have very talented people among us. And I just wanted to kind of salute her work and say that it's really kind of a dream come true. She's playing, you could probably tell from the song, the role of the luckless Myrtle in Great Gatsby. So, it's a dream come true to have a big role like that, and then a nightmare that came true. I think Sarah even used those words when this health issue surfaced, which she's been very open and candid about on Instagram and other places like that. I'm not going to go into it. I think that's sort of her thing to talk about, not mine. But I want her back up on stage so I can go see Great Gatsby and cheer my lungs out. Anyway, just a little reminder, not everything is about politics. Not everything is about the election. And you should always, as a mental health thing, know what it is. Know what the 3 or 4 things are that don't tie you in knots and that untie some of the knots you've gotten tied into because of other stuff going on. For me, it's like music, dogs. There's just a few things that do it for me, and I'm sure you've got your own too. But don't forget about those things. They're very important. And don't forget about the human beings around you, because they're very important too in their own way. Anyway, let's get back to the conversation, 888-720-9677. I'm just going to go down the chain here. I'm not really sure whose turn it is, but we'll start with William in Middletown. Hi, William.
Oh, hi, Colin. Before I say what I was going to say, I'd like to mention that I think you are providing a really great opportunity for the people of Connecticut having these occasional call-in shows, because we don't get a lot of opportunity to say what things to our fellow Connecticut people.
Yeah,
so
by the way, we're gonna do more of them heading down the stretch here. We're gonna after Labor Day, we'll probably be doing it every single Monday up until the election. We're gonna do one next Monday probably as well. So there'll be more and more of these for the exact reason that you're saying. I think these things are necessary and helpful to people.
Well, it's very commendable. For the last few month or so, I have been very conflicted about President Biden. I'm a praying Catholic, and I've been praying for him for 3 years because I know the things that he has to face, and I came very close to agreeing with my son and a bunch of people that maybe he should graciously bow out, but. The last few days I've been watching him, and I've kind of noticed a new energy and confidence, and I'm going, you know what? God's will be done. I think he should just try and get to the finish line. And I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I just felt compelled to say that. So thank you.
I think that's beautifully expressed, and I think it's a completely legitimate point of view. It's not exactly my point of view, but I also like the way that you coined it and couched it. And yes, I mean, you look at him last night, and obviously he's working off a prompter. He's got kind of time to compose himself. And he's actually, I think, very, very plausibly the president, very plausibly the man in charge, and very plausibly the man calling for sanity and peace in this country. And it all kind of tracks. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, my friend David Edelstein, okay, I have three friends. I just saw something he put up on Facebook, kind of saying almost what you said, or although not the Catholic part, but, and saying that he knows that he can vote for Joe Biden in November. He knows the people around Biden, whatever Biden's liabilities might be, or any even further deterioration. He knows who the people are around Biden, what they want, and what they will attempt to accomplish for Americans. And that might be good enough all by itself. And so I salute you for putting it the way that you did. So thanks for your call, William.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to just go down the list here. We'll go to David in New Britain. Here we go. David, you're up.
Hello.
Hi.
I think Democrats are really good at missing opportunities in the past, and I think this could be really an opportunity for Democrats to steal the spotlight by having a wild and crazy battle for the next, for a candidate. And I don't think, after this whole thing, I don't think Biden can win anymore. He might, but even if he does win, he's, going to be sort of limited after a while. And I'm sorry to say, but Kamala Harris, she's a sort of black woman, and I don't think America's ready for that, however qualified she is. So my vote would be Gretchen Whitmer from Wisconsin, I believe. I mean, she has the charisma.
From Michigan, actually. But anyway, continue.
Michigan, okay. Yeah, she has the charisma. And, let's face it, if we can steal the spotlight for the next 3 months, Trump will just go mental because people wouldn't even be paying attention to him anymore. It would be so crazy on the Democratic side. And I think that'd be a good thing. And I think we come out with a candidate who's like not the next generation, but if we can go 2 generations below, I think Whitmer is probably 50 or something. And she's very photogenic. And I think, that's the game. It's sort of the game. We can't put up substance against Trump. We have to put up a bit of an image against Trump too.
Right. So. No, I like your idea that kind of crazy steals the spotlight because it seems we seem to be feeding on crazy these days. I'm sort of all done with, I am not a rabid Kamala Harris fan, but I'm kind of all done with this or that can't get elected. I mean, look, till 2008, a black man whose middle name was Hussein also could not get elected president, and everybody knew that until it wasn't the case anymore. And I think that is, that is kind of true, that the arc of these things, the way of these things is can't happen. Oh, it happened. And yes, we haven't welcomed women candidates for president with open arms entirely so far. You add various layers of being both black and Desi American. That makes it a little bit more of a layer cake. But I'm kind of all done with it can't happen because of that. I mean, I think it can't happen sometimes because it's just the wrong person. But I'm done being a census taker about candidates. I think the right candidate from almost any background can do it. We just see it all over the place too. I mean, not just in the presidency, but look at who gets elected. It's hard to think of a kind of person who can't win a significant public office these days if the race is well run and you got the right electorate. So anyway, but thanks for that. Let's go, just so we keep things relatively diverse. Let's go to Mary Jo in Milford. Hi, Mary Jo.
Hi, how are you?
Just fine.
Should I turn off my radio?
That would be wonderful. Yes, it can mess with your mind otherwise. You come out of it and your thoughts will be, you'll have thoughts in your head that are 7 seconds apart for the rest of the day. It is a terrible feeling.
Okay. I've tried to reach you before on different topics, but I want to comment on the conversation that you suggest we have about whether Biden should continue or someone else should move in. I think that's what you said. We'd have to have a conversation about that. I disagree. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Yes, there were problems, obviously, with the debate, but I blame his staff. He was in 4 time zones. He went from the G7 to a fundraiser in California. Now George Clooney is saying, no, he needs to move on. Well, why was this scheduled so close to each other? Anybody gets jet lag. And, he substitutes words sometimes and all of that. But I think we should stick with him for a couple reasons. I think it's too late. And I think all we're doing is hurting his chances by continually analyzing it, by people coming out saying it's time for him to drop out or somebody else to come in. And I also think that the reason it's too late is because that would mean in August we're realigning the party to another person, hopefully Kamala Harris, but you just had a caller talk about Gretchen Whitmer, and people are talking about Gavin Newsom, which would be a disaster to have another person come in. But even if she came in, it's still a wild card. I know you just spoke about electing Barack Obama, but Kamala Harris, we didn't elect a white woman. There are people out there who are going to find that troublesome.
But there are people out there who find a lot of things troublesome. I mean, there are a lot of people who find Donald Trump troublesome for a whole bunch of different reasons. I think everybody's troublesome on some level. Let me just say a couple of things here, Mary Jo. One of the things that I do kind of object to is the idea that it's too late. Which I know what you mean, and you're not wrong exactly. But the American people have been saying for a year that they think Joe Biden is too old. In polling, and consistently in polling, in national polling, somewhere between 70 and 80% of Americans say he's too old for a second term. Even when you narrow it down just to Democrats, it's in the 70s. And this has been going on for a long time. What has happened in the leadership of the party, and to a certain degree from Joe Biden too, is a kind of arrogance about that. I mean, the American public has been telling the Democrats and Joe Biden for a long time that they think he's too old. It didn't start on June 27th. And so now to say, well, it's too late to do anything now. Well, that's sort of true, but that's because, there was nobody in a leadership position who was willing to do anything about it sooner. I think there's still room. It's going to be tough for some of the reasons that you say. And one thing I can also remind people of is, it's one thing to say, for example, to say the conventions, it's an open convention. You can say that. You can have Biden release his delegates if he's willing to do it, which it doesn't seem like he is. But let's say he became willing to do it. It's still really, really complicated. I've covered a bunch of conventions. I was in Philadelphia in 2000, I guess. They all kind of blur at this point. I was in Philadelphia in 2000, and John McCain told all of his delegates to go with George W. Bush. He didn't have a lot of delegates at that point, but the ones who were committed, he said, I release you. We want a voice vote. We want Bush by acclamation. Well, I was with the Connecticut delegation. Connecticut was a McCain state, and there's some pretty serious people there at the time. I'm pretty sure I remember Chris Healy and the late Ben Duvall, and they didn't want to do it. They were just saying, no, we're not doing it. We're McCain people, and we are not. And McCain had to really, I don't think he went there in person, but I remember I was with them in some room where I think he came on like a closed circuit television thing and just said, please don't do this. So, it's one thing to say your delegates are released. It's another thing. There are going to be people who show up in Chicago as Biden delegates, no matter what Biden says. So, yeah, this does have some moving parts to it. And I'm sorry to cut you off, Mary Jo, but I've actually got to go to a break here or I'll be in terrible trouble. So let's take a little break. We'll come back with more.
Those devils drinking one cold 45. Take a walk and cruise the strip at night. Looks like you got a question in your eyes. You win some, lose some, baby, who's got the time? That's right. Sand City Lights. Spin the wheel around and roll the dice.
Our technical producer today is Gene Amatruda. Let me put this in some kind of frame of reference for you. This is long before I came here, but when Gene Amatruda first applied to work here, his reference letter was from Yoda. It said, something like, Amatruda, strong is the force in that one. And strong is the force in Gene Amatruda. We're great. We're honored to have him as our technical producer today. Jonathan McPants is producing this episode, and he's screening calls and doing all kinds of other stuff as well. And then the rest of the episode is just you, not just you, is you. 888-720-9677. There's no just about our callers here. 888-720-WNPR. Let me jump over here and we'll talk to Peter, also in Middletown. Hi, Peter.
How you doing, Colin? Very
fine.
good to talk with you. Yeah, your show is excellent. The access for the citizens to the airwaves is really needed. I agree with William, who is also from Middletown. What I would like to address is the mass shootings that have been occurring for years now, and things that the assassination attempt has in common with them. And in so many cases, investigators have looked for a motive, which they are now doing with this young fellow. And I don't think they have a motive. I think they've been subliminally manipulated through possibly video games, subliminally manipulated by enemies of the United States to create mass public revulsion about gun ownership in the case of the school shooters, which is probably the most divisive issue in the country at this point.
It is, Peter, it is and it isn't. I mean, it's similar to the kind of numbers I was talking about with Mary Jo before. When you look at polling on, sensible gun laws, we're not talking about extreme confiscation of guns and stuff like that, but sensible modifications in American gun laws. The support is, once again, somewhere around 80%. The only reason that we don't succeed in doing these things, and we should say that Biden, there is a real irony in all this, that Biden has, during his time as president, by one reckoning, called for or had surrogates call for the reinstitution of the ban on assault rifles like 70 times. There is one group of people who have taken this whole thing very seriously, who have reacted to the horrors of Sandy Hook, Parkland, Uvalde, all of those things. They have reacted appropriately and saying, we got to start here. We got to get these guns off the street. And there's another party that doesn't. I understand that we're kind of in a different moment right now in terms of the tone of this race and what kinds of things people either will or won't say. But it's hard for me to put up with a lot of sanctimony from Republicans who have opposed any kind of meaningful reform of gun laws, whether we're talking about bump stocks or just some kind of ban on what we could attempt to define as assault rifles. It helped the first time it was tried. When Trump went out to Iowa, he said the thing about, you got to get over it. How do you get over it? How do you get over it? Let's see him get over it. He didn't face anything like what a lot of people in this country have had to go through. In terms of the kind of wounds he sustained or the size of the body count here, it's still a serious matter, but it isn't like what we've had to deal with. It isn't like the things he's told people to get over. And I'd like to see a little bit of a change on that, even if it is sort of a battlefield conversion. I'll take it. I'll take it if he'll change his tune a little bit, be a little less beholden to the NRA, and listen a little bit more to the people of this country. Because Biden was right last night. This just can't go on. We need a more peaceful attitude towards one another, and we need to have people. People who are not old enough to rent a car should not be able to obtain an assault rifle. I mean, it just seems like very much common sense. Anyway. The number's here, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. We'll go to Alex, I guess, and we'll get to as many other people as we possibly can. But Alex, you have the floor right now.
Hi, Colin. First, I'd like to give a shout out to Governor Lamont and Congressman Himes for calling on Biden to step aside. I've heard the argument that it's racist to call on Biden to step aside because polling shows that slightly more whites think that he should step aside than blacks. So, notwithstanding that Biden's most likely replacement would be Kamala Harris, why would Democrats rather stick with a candidate that is very likely to lose because they're afraid of being called a racist than replace Biden and have a much better chance of holding on to the presidency?
Yeah, I mean, once again, I'm a little, I guess I'm a little weary of the kind of census taking aspect of this. I mean, one thing I get and identify with is if there's an attempt to move Harris in anything other than the most dignified way. I mean, somebody else came up with this scenario. I think it's not a real one, but that Justice Sotomayor retires and Kamala Harris gets appointed to the Supreme Court, and then Gretchen Whitmer gets chosen by Biden to take her place, and then he resigns or whatever. She runs for president, which is, yes, please, that would be great, but that's not going to happen. And anything else is going to tell Black Americans that, or at least a segment, Black Americans don't vote in a block any more than any other minority group does. But a certain segment of the Black electorate is going to say, wow, when things got real, they didn't really want to have a Black candidate. They took they took the opportunity away from a Black woman to give it to somebody else. And I get that. That's a problem. That's a real problem. It's not clear to me how big a problem it is. I'd like to see a lot more nuanced polling on it, particularly in swing states and stuff like that. But it is some kind of problem, and it's some kind of reason to consider if, in fact, Biden's going to go, sticking with Harris. The other reason being that she can inherit his war chest in a way that other candidates cannot legally do, as I understand it. Anyway, it's a little tricky piece of election law, but that's the way I understand it. Okay, we're going to have to stop now. We're out of time. But first of all, I want to apologize to James and Bill and Martin. Sorry we didn't get to you. We'll do it next time. I think a week from today, we'll probably be doing this format again. So thanks for tuning in, and thanks to everybody who helped out, and we're gone.
The number you have reached has been disconnected.